When you look at other people who are experts like agencies, coaches, consultants, fractional service providers, things of that nature, oftentimes what ends up happening is everyone looks and sees everyone else is doing all this marketing and it must be working for them, right? Well, the reality is a lot of people are really very dependent on referrals. That sounds great because, hey, somebody comes in, they already have been told to know, like, and trust you by someone that they already know, like, and trust. So that kind of transference of trust comes over. And if they're looking for the products and services that you're offering, then it just makes sense for them. But the challenge with referrals is it can be a bit of a trap because you end up in this feast or famine cycle. And so, to talk about that, I want to bring on just kind of a thought experiment here. So we like to think that referrals are the best way to grow your business. Well, they're the simplest way to do it. And so if you do a good job, you focus on great work, you oftentimes the word of mouth will follow. And so people like to talk about things that they're excited about. So if you can become that trusted expert that people will want to talk about, you get those referrals, and those referrals are some of the highest quality leads. And so that keeps your clients happy, and you just have the pipeline fills itself, right? Well, that's partially true, but it's not the full story. And I'm sure a lot of people can probably relate to this. Referrals comes in warm. They sometimes are really almost asking you, like, hey, will you please work with me? So you have that framing that works great of they come in like really wanting your permission to work with you. And they have that trust. So you don't have to develop a lot of trust. They're already coming in like, hey, this is kind of already, told myself I want to at least consider what this person has to say, meaning when they set up a call with you. But here's what a lot of people don't talk about with referrals. This is kind of the dark side of it, is that they're actually riskier than you think. And so a lot of people have developed an entire business off of referrals, kind of hoping that, hey, if I get to know other people in the industry, they'll refer people to me, or if I do a great job, that referrals will just come to me from, my reputation, which is great when they happen. But ask yourself a few questions. When was your last referral came in? And some people might be saying, well, hey, it was just today. I got 2 referrals in my inbox. How consistent is that? So, and do you know when is the next one coming? And do you know how often you can even trust that they're going to come? And so you don't have control over referrals, and that is the hard part. And so you can't predict them. You really can't throw any gas on that fire. Like maybe you can reach out to some, clients that you've worked with in the past or current clients who really love you and say, hey, do you know of anyone? But oftentimes that conversation, comes across like, some sort of, 1950s sales advice of like, just go out and, shake the trees and ask for referrals. Maybe you can get some, but most people aren't comfortable like going out and selling for you. They're more than happy oftentimes to refer your name if they think they have someone in mind who would be good for you. But it's very hard to kind of put the pedal on the gas, so to speak, there. So then the problem is, what happens if they stop? Sometimes people have like one really good referral source, or maybe it's a partner in the same industry, or maybe they have adjacent services, or maybe somebody who does the same thing you do, but they give you their overflow. What happens if they have more capacity? Or what happens if their business takes a downturn and they're trying to fill up their own pipeline? Now all of a sudden you're left in the lurch. And so ultimately the problem with referrals is you're not in control. So what happens when your best referral sources, they go quiet, they move on to do other things, they retire, they're just no longer in business. So maybe you've anchored your client, or you have an anchor client, I should say, who churns. What are you going to do when you have, let's say, if to our friends who maybe are consultants or fractional service providers or fractional executives, you can probably relate to this. Maybe you have a handful of clients and that keeps you very busy, and you might be saying to yourself, I don't need more people. I don't need more clients. But what happens if suddenly something happens and 2 of them drop you in the same week? And maybe you had 5 clients and they're now all of a sudden gone. You just took a 40% cut. Or you have, that hero client who, ultimately is 60, 70% of your revenue and they left. What are you going to do? And so the challenge is, if you have, a slow time period and you need clients now, how are you going to backfill them? And so if you have nothing waiting, no client pipeline, no warm list, no backup, it's not necessarily a lead problem, it's an exposure problem. And so, really what it comes down to marketing is ultimately getting exposure, getting your name out there. And so this is the challenge again with referrals, is that you can be stuck in this feast or famine trap. And I've talked to a lot of people in this industry who ultimately know that they're stuck in this trap. It may feel good because it feels like a compliment when someone reaches out and gives you a referral, but it becomes real. When you all of a sudden you lose a client, all of a sudden somebody doesn't pay their next invoice, a referral scores quiet, and all of a sudden you're scrambling. You went from feast to now you're in famine. What do you do? So oftentimes people try to fix it fast, and maybe they start posting content. Maybe you're already posting content, but the challenge with content is you can feel productive because you're putting stuff on there. Maybe you are getting, people to like or share your stuff, or they comment on LinkedIn or whatever the case is. But are the people who are liking and commenting, are they just people that are hoping you will like and comment their stuff? Or are they people who ultimately would be your target ICP, your ideal client profile? So you might just end up be talking to other people who are basically just your competitors, or in a similar, coach, consultant, agency, service provider niche, but they're not your actual clients that you're going after. You could run ads. Now, the good news is, you get data fast with ads, but that data is expensive. It's expensive to learn. It's expensive to run. And oftentimes, you see all these videos of like, you get X amount of ROAS or get these many clients quickly. If you really talk to people who are doing this for a living, running ads, especially for people in this kind of like trust-based agency, coach, service provider niche, they will tell you that you could be running ads maybe for 6 months, several $1,000s a month in ads before you even really get any good clients coming out of it. And you can burn a lot of money very quickly before you even know it's coming. And you want to talk about a gut check. If you've ever run ads and you're trying to hope and pray that you get those clients, it can be very challenging. Maybe you do cold outreach. Cold outreach is good because you can feel like you're doing a lot of activity. Hey, I just emailed, hundreds or thousands of people in one day. You've got, all these, I'm sure they're great. These other platforms that you can use to cold outreach. And the challenge is, you kind of feel a little spammy reaching out to, especially if you're doing super high volume. So like, how much do these people even know about me? Oftentimes people, use, other non-similar sounding domains just to protect their own domain. The response rate is low. Oftentimes when people talk about like, 1 to 2% response rate. Well, of those responses, how many of those are really just out of office alerts or leave me the heck alone? So actual positive responses is a very small percentage. And even from there, how many of them actually say, yeah, let's book a meeting? And if they do, they come in with like a lot of distrust, like almost like, why am I even here? And so they need a lot of warming up. So that is the challenge with those, different options you have, which is what a lot of people do. And there's nothing wrong with them. I'm pro all three that I just mentioned. I do a little bit of all of them. In fact, this video in essence is like me doing social media. Now, the result can happen is that you do all three even. You could have weeks go by. Your stress starts to build up because you're like, when's the next client coming? And maybe you end up feel like you have to compromise on what clients you take just so you can keep the bread on the table, so to speak. You can keep, a roof over your head. And so that cycle starts again, and that you're praying and hoping that, hey, when's the next big referral for another great client coming in? And you're just looking around at your previous referral sources or people that might refer to you. And we've all had the people who are like, hey, let's partner and send each other referrals. And you know what? Let's just be honest. 9 times out of 10, they're saying, send me leads, So how do you take more control? Now, there is another option, and that is what I think everyone knows they should be doing, and that's email marketing. A lot of people aren't doing email marketing, and if they are doing it, they're doing it wrong. The problem with email marketing is, and I'm a huge proponent of email marketing, is that you have to have a list. In order to send emails out, you need to have a list. And what if you don't have one? And even if you did, what would you send? That's the challenge for a lot of people, is like, okay, that blinking cursor, or all of a sudden you go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and say, hey, help me write this email. And it just sounds like junk. You're like, I don't want to have this represent me to, whether your list has 30 people or 30,000, you don't necessarily always feel comfortable with it. And so it's still a time suck trying to figure out like what to say, what to say, what to send, when to send it. And then where do you get more subscribers, more people onto your list? That's the challenge. So oftentimes with this, people just end up going months and nothing gets built with their email list. But the good news is, I just want to make sure I'm clear here. Email still works. Now, just want to take a quick pause and say, if you like the notes that I'm putting together here, I will have a link in the description down below where you can, I'll have a Google Doc. The Google Doc, it won't even be opt-in. You can just, check this out for yourself. But basically, social media, oftentimes, you may feel like you're reaching a lot of people, but it's not. The reality is, once you have any sort of following in any social media platform, your reach, the number of impressions you get, meaning, how many people see your posts or see, whatever it is you're putting out, is generally very small relative to the number of people who are following you or subscribe to your content or whatever the word is on the channel you're talking about. So ultimately, you're not in control. That platform is 100% in control of who sees your content. So you could have 100,000 followers and reach almost none of them tomorrow, because that platform, may change their algorithm. Maybe what worked today doesn't work tomorrow. And you're constantly learning. And maybe you just watched a video by someone who's regurgitating stuff, from 4 algorithms ago, and nothing is working. So, or maybe you're somebody, hey, this algorithm hack or whatever worked for them, but it's not working for you, and you're not sure why. Email is different, because for the most part, you send an email out and you own that list. Almost everyone you send an email to, it's at least going to go into their inbox. Some people will go into spam, but that's going to be a relatively small percentage of the overall who sees your emails. And that, for the most part, I wouldn't say every email lands in an inbox. Most emails land in an inbox. In fact, I might update that. But one of the things about inbox that's different than, let's say, social media feeds, is that when you're on your phone or whatever, and you're looking around on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, pick your favorite social media network of choice, is you're just killing time. Like you're just curious. Now, people use the term doom scrolling, but some people are more looking for positive things, something inspiring or something that might, help them or whatever, but they're just looking, they're just curious. Whereas with your inbox, oftentimes people look at their inbox, especially when they're in work mode, as a to-do list. And so your inbox is almost like a to-do list. And when you're reaching people and they click on your email, that's a conscious choice that they made to click on your email. And even if they don't open your email, they still saw your name. But when they do make that conscious choice to open your email and they read it, they're choosing that they want to see what you have to say, and they're more likely to take action than social media. if you do email right. Now, this is a completely different relationship than the scroll. So like I was saying, people are scrolling, boom, 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 boom. They're not taking action on a lot of it. Maybe they get inspired that they would want to go try something they read about on social, but they're not always, necessarily picking up the pieces and running with it. Especially if you want them to buy something or set up a meeting with you, that's going to be very hard to do from your social media feed. And you can turn people off very quickly, and those algorithms are brutal if you're not getting the same level of engagement. And ultimately, your goal is not to get engagement. It's not to get likes and hearts. Your goal is to get clients. And so email is great, but there are some challenges with it. And that is, everybody knows they should be building a list, like I was talking about before. The good news and bad news is there's a lot of people not doing it. I talk to people all the time who say, I know I should be doing a list. Or people, I've talked to people who have built a list and they've done nothing with it. It's because it's like one more tick box of things I should be doing. And so if you don't have a list, where are you going to get your subscribers from? And that's a question a lot of times people have. And then maybe you want to try the content hamster wheel. Maybe you pick up a few here and there. People will sign up for your email list. But it can be hard to get people onto your email list, from posting content. And it can be slow, exhausting, and unpredictable, trying to get people to sign up to your email list. So, ultimately, the challenge, now I have a solution here in a minute. The challenge with email is that you have a chicken and an egg problem. So I know we've kind of gone a long ways from referrals to emails. Emails is going to solve, I think, a lot of problems people have. But it's all about understanding this chicken and egg problem, is that you can't do emails without a list. You have to have it's hard to build a list if you don't have some sort of audience. And you can't build an audience without time you don't have. And a lot of people watching this are like, especially if you need a client tomorrow, well, how do I get clients tomorrow? If I need clients in 6 months from now, when maybe, you do a really good job and you work yourself out of a client because now all of a sudden they're, going somewhere else. You need to have something to pick up those pieces. And, when are you going to have time to do this? Because you're doing the work. And so one of the fastest ways to build an audience is to borrow the audiences of other people. So if you want to build your own list, borrow from other people's lists. Now, they're not just going to give you their own list. But the good news is someone who has your ideal clients, they've already gathered them. In fact, they might be willing to share them even. But why would they want to share them with you? So you don't have to build your own audience. You could borrow it. But the challenge is, why would someone want to share their audience with you? And you've probably seen it before, especially with cold email, or if you've ever tried, having a podcast or something like that. Or, you get people like reaching out to you like, hey, do stuff for me, promote my stuff. That almost never works. Now, what I find does work is if you say, okay, who are my peers? Who are complementary service providers? If you're a fractional CFO, who's a fractional COO or a fractional CMO? If you're an agency, who does Shopify store development, who is an agency with Amazon sellers who are trying to get onto Shopify and build the Shopify store. So who's complementary to what you're doing? And even who are your competitors? Oftentimes your competitors have people on their email list that would be more likely to work with you than work with them, believe it or not. So you could find a way to bring your audiences together around a shared topic that your clients and customers and prospects, your future subscribers that you're hoping for care about. Now, there is a way you can do it to get everyone to promote, everyone benefits, everyone grows together. And that's what I like to call virtual events. And that could be things like webinars, workshops, masterclasses, virtual summits, whatever you want to call it. Now, virtual summits, I think, are one of the best ways to build lists quickly. The challenge is that it can be a little overwhelming. So there is an easy path, which I'll get to the easy, smaller version, and that would be do like maybe a panel type webinar, or maybe you just bring on a guest and you have one or two speakers and you have a very focused topic, like, hey, this time we're going to talk about, lead generation or for a particular audience, or we're going to talk about, how agency owners can have, better fulfillment without the stress and the owner having to be part of every decision, or whatever that topic is. We're going to talk about pay-per-click advertising on Amazon. Whatever your topic is, something that your desired ICP would be interested in, and that there's people with audiences who would be interested in that topic too. You facilitate putting on these events. Is going to be very beneficial. So you have a small event, even if it's just, 45 minutes to an hour, maybe even less than that, possibly. I tend to find about an hour to hour and a half is that sweet spot where everybody has more than enough time to talk about what they want to talk about. And then you can get dozens to hundreds, or, sometimes even over 1,000 new subscribers who showed up on purpose coming to your event. And I've done this with a lot of people. I've done it in my own businesses. And this is very beneficial because you can build lists quickly. Now, there's a bigger version, and that is you do a virtual summit where you have 20 to 30 speakers. You have hundreds to thousands of quality leads coming in, because with all these, your speakers that you have that are joining you, they're excited to promote this to their list, because you got to think about this. Why would somebody want to promote this? Well, they're trying to get their name out. So if you can position your events in a way that your core audience, that your referral partners are getting in front of your core audience you're trying to get to, and that they're positioning themselves to that audience as an expert among experts, you're doing them a favor in essence. And so the quality of leads that come in this way tends to be really good, because it's not like they just happen to stumble across some random post you made on social media. They were referred by someone they already trust. So there's this transfer of trust over to you. Not quite the same as if, it's like a introduction referral type of thing, but it's almost kind of like a micro referral in essence. So they opted in on purpose because they wanted to get a particular type of value. You deliver that value. And so they're now, you've made a deposit to them, know, like, and trust you. And they already came in pre-warmed up, because they, they'll get to hear from you directly as well. So think of it as this is kind of like word of mouth at scale. And so it's like referrals that you have control over. So there is a flywheel effect that will compound over time if you do this. And so what most people miss out on is your events and your email list. They don't have to work separately. They can feed each other. And so you don't have to be doing tons of big events. You could do 1 or 2 virtual summits a year. You could do maybe monthly or 2 per quarter webinars. And you don't even have to call them a webinar. You call it a masterclass. Sometimes people just think a webinar is just going to be a big sales pitch. You don't even have to be a big sales pitch. You don't have to make these things a pitch fest. You can make them 100% valuable, and you'll get tons of goodwill from the audience that arrives. So here's how the flywheel works. You run an event, you get people to join your email list, and you nurture them consistently through your email list. Some will become clients now because some of them are going to, hey, they signed up for something that was relevant. They realize, hey, you could provide a service they need, and that a small percentage are going to be ready. Now, some of those people will even refer clients down the road. So now we're starting to compound on itself. And then you can get more people to join your list by hosting more virtual events. You run these other virtual events, and you're continuing to nurture the people who are already on your list. And so the people who are on your list from a previous event, now they're going to be excited to come to another one. So you're nurturing them that way, and the cycle compounds and continues. So when it comes to your list, there's always a small percentage that's ready to buy now. and that's totally normal. But that real opportunity is, let's say 3% are kind of in that demographic that's hot looking to buy now, and 97%, maybe they're down the road, or maybe they just need to be convinced of your methodology is something that would work for them. And a lot of people are just, they either want the referrals or the quick wins. Who can I get a quick ROI from immediately? And they skip out on this compounding factor that's going to happen over time, and they don't stay in front of those people, and they abandon them essentially. And email marketing is one of the best ways to stay top of mind. So email keeps you visible in between your events. It builds up trust over time because they keep seeing your name in their inbox. They're getting value from the emails you're providing. You warm people up at their pace when they're ready to become a client. And then you just become the obvious choice because it's been positioned that way. It's kind of like an inception thing, the dream within the dream. Now you're putting yourself as the obvious choice in an inception manner into their brain. So this all pays off when someone has been on your list for several months. They've read your emails, they watch your content, they see your name consistently. Eventually, they may reach out to you on Google. They might not. They may not ask for a referral. They may just come straight to you because they've gotten to know, like, and trust you. Or maybe, you made an offer in an email and they took you up on it. Maybe you made an offer in a virtual event. They took you up on it. Or they just decided one day, hey, this works for me. In fact, there's basically running the system. I did it for an agency in the Amazon space. And in about 18 months, just that we could track, we had about $1.2 million in ARR, annual recurring revenue, that came through a funnel using this exact system that I'm talking about here. And that's just what we can track, because not everybody clicks on the links or goes on the calendar pages we want them to. Sometimes they just, wake up and reach out to us and say, hey, I'm ready to become a client. And so it's likely at least 2-3 times higher than that $1.2 million. So this is a very powerful system. It's not luck, it's a system. It's setting yourself up so you're not having to deal with the feast or famine. You're basically developing an insurance policy on your future business. And so if you want to think about maybe creating a system like this for yourself, you can download my free workbook. You just go to lgnmarketing.com/workbook, which I've got in this Google Doc, as well as I have a link to down below. Or feel free to email myself or my team at hello@lgnmarketing.com. In case you're wondering, what does LGN marketing stand for? That is lead generation and nurturing marketing. So we'll help you with lead generation, nurture them, turn them into clients. And my name is Kevin Sanderson from LGN Marketing, and I appreciate having you here. Take care.